Hello there, this is Imad al-Din Aisha once again, sci-fi author and researcher here in Cairo, Egypt, and I want to talk this time about Furiosa as an indirect way of talking about Dune Part 1. Furiosa has a lot of problems with it, and it's been panned a lot, and sadly it's not made the money it deserves, but it's a really good movie. And I want to discuss it at the level of, you could say, cinematography and the level of world building. Again, to draw lessons for sci-fi epic movies, and again, trash Dune Part 1. You knew it was coming. Furiosa and Fury Road before it are very intelligent movies because they show you the nature of fanaticism in a rational way, in a thoroughly humanist way, where you don't denigrate the people who are the victims of that laboratory-produced fanaticism. That's the best way of putting it. You have the war pups. They're the children of Immortan Joe and his harem. They literally suicide bombers. They leap to their death willingly with explosives and blow things up. And they're a product of a social system that deliberately created them. They're all painted white like Immortan Joe. They're literally his sons. And so they're completely loyal and raised to be completely loyal. And the only thing they can look forward to is the afterlife, Valhalla, and dying, for which they have to go through dying. But notice here the hodgepodge of different mythologies being used deliberately by Immortan Joe, and of course by George Miller. Valhalla, the hall of the afterlife for the Vikings, a famous warrior race. We always associate them with being a warrior race. Vikings and Scots and these kind of people, we always see them as warriors in period dramas and historical references. You have Chrome, and I spray them, a kind of modern, technologically advanced version of Valhalla with cars and that kind of thing. And they always say witness before they kill themselves. And witness, this is an Islamic reference. You can recognize it straight away. A martyr in Arabic is called shaheed, but it comes from shahid, which is witness. And we say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is his messenger. Muhammad Rasulullah. So they're using Islamic references here, and of course you have a harem, polygamy, and also, but there's other references too. Immortan Joe stands at top of a hill, painted white, to hide his lesions and mutations and disease and weaknesses, and has grey hair, of course, wisdom, that kind of thing, and has a snarl. You never actually see his face, his mouth. And he gives the showers water on them, like a god from up and above. And this is what's known in anthropology and history as hydraulic despotism. Pharaoh, of course, being the classic example. He's the guy whose job it is to distribute the water and to guarantee the flowing of the Nile, doing battle with the gods, in effect, and a demigod, or the son of the sun god, that kind of thing. And I'll tell you this, and you may not know this, my mother told me this when I was a kid. In Yemen, at the time of the Imamite, before the civil war, the imam leader would come dressed in a fluorescent suit, standing up on the mountains, and tell his people that God sent him. So it's using this imagery very self-consciously and intelligently. But sorry, my phone's ringing. Just give me a second. Sorry about that. So you have again this usage of symbols and motifs very intelligently to construct this future post-apocalyptic world, and in a way that makes perfect sense. You would imagine that a despot would want to have an army that's completely loyal to him, and you can't get more loyalty than blood and conditioning and raising the kids yourself, like the war pups, like dogs, literally, for battle, for hunting. And that you'd want to guarantee your bloodline by having as many children as possible, and so have as many wives as possible. So there's nothing racist going on at all. This is a very intelligent political, anthropological setup. And he just uses imagery from all over the place, not just from Islam, to construct and communicate this future world. So that's really good. Cinematography. The man, I like Fury Road more for lots of reasons, but Furiosa is beautiful. It brings the desert to life. it's close-up photography, not just perspective photography, close-up photography of the sand, and it's almost alive. It's almost coming out. It's crusty and looks like dried blood, and it's coming out towards you because of the wind. And there's endless dust clouds hiding the sun and creating this sense of intrigue and mystery. It's got a mythical landscape. You feel like you're on another planet. You feel like you're on Mars or on Arrakis, which is a hell of a lot more than I can say for the actual planet Arrakis in a certain movie we'll talk about shortly. So the man, George Miller, is just a genius. And I think it makes perfect sense that he can do all those things because he actually lives in Australia and grew up there, so he knows the desert. He knows things like the refraction of light because of wobbly air, because of heated air, superheated air. I'll tell you this, here in Cairo, even not in the dead of summer, even in the city where you have asphalt and everything, you can see that wobbly air effect over the roads because of the exhaust fumes coming from the cars. It's that ever-present a reality. Never mind living in the desert. I grew up in Kuwait in the 1980s. Mirages are a common occurrence. You think the land is coming towards you, the image from far away is coming towards you, and it's just an illusion. And you can find things like that in Philip K. Dick, his novel The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch, and I think also in Martian Timeslip. So even Philip K. Dick, who grew up in rural Los Angeles, originally comes from Chicago, he understood these things perfectly. Which is more than I could say for a certain person and a certain studio to produce that certain person's interpretation of a certain Frank Herbert novel, without naming names. Anyway, Dune Part 2 understands the same things that George Miller does. You have the southern Fremen who are fanatics, but they're fanatics because they live in a complete desolate wasteland where nothing can survive without faith. And that faith was exploited and fed deliberately by the Bene Gesserit, but they lost control of it. The lie comes to truth if enough people believe in it. The other, and Stilgar is portrayed very nicely in the second movie. He's portrayed better than actually in the novel, to be honest. A man with many layers and tenderness to him, and battling himself as well. Because again, should he listen to his reason, knowing that the guy is not the Kuzat Haderach, is not the Sen Ghaib, or should he just do what's better for the community and let them believe that, so to mobilize them to become free? Wonderful stuff. And also the cinematography is very good, because that first opening sequence you have it at dusk, and this red oppressive, again, like the air is coming out at you and squeezing your ears in. You can feel it, the violence of the climate, and the redness and hard, being very difficult to see the difference between the land and the sky, and exaggerating the difference between the sand and the sunlight and the shadow. It's thoroughly alien, which is what should have happened in Dune Part 1 but didn't. All they did in Dune Part 1 was portray the Fremen as a bunch of buffoons, particularly Stilgar. He's not even the noble savage, he's just the savage, and you have Jamis, who growls at Paul as if trying to give him a heart attack when he can't defeat him in battle. It's bloody pathetic and offensive scene. And there's no explanation given for why the Fremen are the way they are. The harshness of the environment, the oppression of the Harkonnens, not being in control of their fate, in control of their planet, and just the bleakness of the existence there. And you need faith to sustain you. None of that, and you're not impressed with them even as a warrior race. It's nothing terribly impressive going on in the first movie. And also the cinematography, despite the endless praise it got, is wrong. It just does not bring out the desert. It does not create this oppressive sense of heat and the sense of being on an alien world. Look at the scenes where they're out on the outside. The most you get is an umbrella, old-fashioned wooden Chinese-style umbrella to protect you from the sunlight. Everybody's up till here, closed. I'm here indoors with a fan on, and the weather's actually quite nice today. It's still a bit wintry by Egyptian standards, and I have to have this fully open. You see what I mean? To stop sweating profusely. And the humidity gets to you as well. You don't see any of that in Dune. You don't see wobbly air from the sunlight, from the heat, from the sand refracting the air. You see people not sweating out in the daylight. The only time you ever see Paul sweating is at nighttime when he's in the tent That's the only time he sweats. It's lame. And also you have a lot of religious symbolism and references thrown in there in an offensive and downright racist way. I'm not going to accuse the director of doing it because he corrected the imagery in the second movie, but I'd say the studios just put it in nonchalantly, thinking that nobody would notice. The Harkonnens, the servants, always bow down to them, prostrate themselves in prayer, just like Muslims would. And that is a classic motif used in Western cinema, Orientalist motif, because they forget that in Islam we only bow down to God, we don't bow down to human beings. But you always have an Arabic guy or Muslim guy bowing down to the leader or bowing down to the law in a fatalistic way, like you see in the movie Hidalgo. And Europeans forget their own history. They forget that they bow down to, they kneel in front of the Queen to get knighted, and that they kneel in front of, they bow down all the way in front of droop their head in front of the Queen to get knighted, and they kneel in front of God when they pray. Things like that. They just completely, and they forget that the Chinese, the Japanese, all those successful, industrially advanced people also bow down to those older than them out of respect. But for some reason that's okay. But when we do it, and we don't actually do it, we do it in front of God only. So there, that imagery there is being done deliberately, and in a bad way, in a stupid way, not like what you see in George Miller. So Furiosa is the antidote to Dune Part 1, and as if by prophecy, Dune Part 2 has a lot of features that you get of Furiosa, even though it came out before Furiosa came out. Who knows, maybe they read the production notes for Furiosa. They've been producing it for quite a while. I can't tell. I don't have enough intelligence. I don't have enough industrial spies I don't have any industrial spies. I get my information through YouTube like everybody else and through books. So that's enough about the good things about Furiosa. I don't want to badmouth that. It's been badmouthed enough online, and it's not selling well, which is a real shame. It is a good movie. It's a bit long. It's a bit tedious in places. It's polished in places, hyperbolic, and it does seem to imitate Kill Bill too much. Red Letter Media people have noticed that, and I noticed that from them. You have all these chapters, and you have the excessively talkative ending between Chris Hemsworth and Taylor-Joy. But again, if I start going into nitpicking things I don't like, I'll be here forever, and I don't want to do it. I really like the movie. I encourage you to watch it. So here's Emad, over and out. Goodbye.